Okay, so my name's Sophie Elliott. I am the PR and marketing executive for PropertyShowrooms.com. And today on our first Google Hangout, we're joined by a technology consultant for the property industry and founder of the Digital Marketing Bureau, James Deasley. Hi, James.
Hi Sophie, thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. So, James, you do a lot of work with augmented and virtual reality. Could you describe for us what augmented and virtual reality are and how they can be applied to the property industry?
Yeah, certainly. So, crikey, it's like trying to get so many big topics into a small sort of description. So bear with me. So okay, so we've got general reality, which is obviously you and I just talking now.
Yeah.
What I was talking about is most people understand general reality, most people generally understand virtual reality, which is a total immersion into a different environment. So let's put some property context in here, which it might be that you're looking around a property that doesn't even exist yet. There's no buildings. You are just immersed in a new property in virtual reality. And then you've always got augmented reality, which is basically in the middle. And the sort of the general definition is that it's a digital image which is superimposed on your real life image. So let's take, for example, you might be holding your tablet up against a bare bit of ground, and a property might appear from that ground, but you can still see real life around you. You've just got this superimposing image of a property in your real life perspective.
Okay, so that was augmented.
Yes.
So then take us through virtual a little bit as well.
Okay, so yeah, so virtual is when you're totally immersed into a different environment. So you will put on a set of a headset, for example. Bear with me one second, I'll just get one. There you go. That's not brilliantly prepared, is it, from earlier on? But so this is a virtual reality headset which you would put on, and by viewing it, you've actually got a couple of lenses in here, and that is basically putting you into a completely and utterly different environment.
Okay, so that's the Oculus Rift there then?
Yes, that is. This is called the Dev Kit 1, and this is the first one which they came out last year. And they've just recently, in the last couple of months, they've sent out what's called Dev Kit 2, which I've got a set of somewhere around here, which is just increasing the high definition. And it's also there was an initial issue with virtual reality, which is when you are immersed into an environment. If you looked one way or the other, it would take a little bit of time for the image to catch up with your movement, and it's called a latency. And originally, it was causing a little bit of nausea with people because obviously your brain is moving faster than your image, which is a bit distorting. So the Development Kit 2, which has just come out, has improved that latency incredibly, and it's got further to go, but it just makes it a far more comfortable environment for you to be immersed in.
Fantastic. And I think Google have just brought out a cardboard version as well, haven't they? Well, they've talked about releasing a cardboard version.
Yes, they have. Yeah, it's called Google Cardboard. One of the big things, I mean, so back when Oculus was purchased back in, I think it was May or April this year by Facebook for $2 billion. It was a massive, massive move. For me, it was a very interesting move because it merged my two worlds of marketing and technology in ways that I could never have foreseen sort of 2 or 3 years ago. But that was a big move because it means that virtual reality is going to hit the masses at some point. Most people, I mean, there's 1.3 billion accounts on Facebook. Facebook are going to be looking at using virtual reality as a way, in my mind, of generating income. Just 2 days ago, there was a virtual reality film which has just been released for purchase. And for me, Facebook is going to be the distributor of this content. So whether it be films, whether it be games. So that was a big move for Facebook. And then about 2 months after that, there was a Google conference, a developer conference, where they released Google Cardboard. Now, the advantage of Google Cardboard, and you'll forgive me, Sophie, I should have got this all prepared. This is going to take
no
5 seconds. Hang on.
Is this your man cave, James?
Sorry, say that again?
Is this your man cave where you keep all your toys?
I wish it was. I wish it was. It'd be even better. But look, there's a reason for my madness in this. Okay, so look, that is DevKit 2. All right, so
Okay.
I'll show you all the little toys. The point of here is that this is the second development kit in this. All right, so it's a little bit more refined, a little bit smaller. But the point of showing this to you is the fact that this is the box that it comes in. All right, it's a bit clunky box. It's a tethered unit, which means it has to plug into a PC. But the point is, this is in a sense what Google Cardboard is.
Yeah.
And it's very different in the sense that with an Oculus, you're tied to a computer. In this, what you do is you just put your smartphone into the front of this unit. And so what it means is that the reciprocal, which is delivering that virtual reality experience, is your smartphone. And that is why, at first, when Google and basically sent all their developers in the lunch breaks, they lumped on their, this is a dev kit, they put on their tables the equivalent of this.
Okay.
And they all thought they were taking the mickey out of the Facebook acquisition, when in actual fact what they were doing is they were saying, no, we are that serious about virtual reality that this sort of device where you can put your smartphone in, an untethered virtual reality thing, is a way of reaching every single person on this planet. Bearing in mind there are more smartphones on this planet, or more phones, I should say, than there are people. So it was a bit of a sort of, everyone thought they were taking the mickey, but actually they weren't. It was a very serious point, and they said to their developers, think immersion first. So the reason why, from a property industry perspective, every single property developer should be taking a look at this and saying, well, hang on a minute, we've got Facebook who've just bought Oculus, we've got Google who is talking about Google Cardboard, and you can buy these on eBay for like $20. This is something which has been branded by a marketing agency here in the UK. These can all be contextualized to a branding and just sent out there to people to say, just put your smartphone in, go to our website and have a look around our new developments. So, every single property developer around there is building CGIs. So there's no way that, there's an easy way that they can just repurpose those as virtual reality content. Obviously, it's not straightforward, but you can reach everybody around the world very, very quickly.
And that's the seriousness, is in Google and Facebook's conviction. I mean, I think Mark Zuckerberg, did he not recently make a statement where he said that he thinks that immersive technology is going to be a huge part of our everyday lives? Something along those lines.
Absolutely. Yeah, he said it was, we're making a long-term bet that augmented reality and virtual reality will become a part of our daily lives. That's his exact quote-for-quote statement, which is why they did it, which is why they purchased it. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, there's a lot of talk in the digital marketing world. There's a lot of talk about Google Plus, right, as a social media platform, and a lot of people misquote it as saying it is a social media platform. It isn't. It's a social media layer. It's a digital marketing layer, because Google, by having one access to Google Plus, you've got access to Google Maps, you've got access to Gmail, you've got access to Google Local for Business, you've got access to Google Translate. You've got an entire ecosystem which is being built around one social media platform. Facebook have never had that. So this purchase of Oculus, and others for that matter, all the other little tiny social media platforms they've bought, for me, it's all about building Facebook as a platform across multiple layers, which people can basically, rather than just having status updates and discussions with friends, suddenly you're going to Facebook for other reasons. And that is all part and parcel of this Oculus purchase for me.
So that's sort of like, it becomes your daily planner, it becomes your communication tool, it becomes everything you need in one place.
Absolutely. It's not there yet. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg only a couple of days ago came out with a 3, a 5, and a 10-year plan. But it's all around building Facebook as the go-to place. I mean, don't forget, they've had a massive problem over the last 2 or 3 years, and they've been hemorrhaging the youngsters. They've been losing them all to the Snapchats of this world. So what are they doing? They're buying smaller companies to build up that sort of audience again. I mean, Christ, you look at the amount of 13 to 18-year-olds who are gamers. So all of a sudden, you've got the Oculus Rift, which is being built, let's be honest, for gaming. You've got, in 1 month's time, you've got this collaboration between Samsung and Oculus, which means that the Note 3, which is a big old phone, I've got, a Note 4, sorry, and that means that Samsung are bringing out the equivalent of this, and you can slot in their new Note 4 phone, and that will be the first really serious commercial release of virtual reality, and all of that is because this youngsters, they need the youngsters back. and they want to give them something which means they'll come back to Facebook, download your latest games through Facebook. All of that is fundamentally important.
So, well, now that we've touched on social, I mean, is this, there's always been a sort of question as to whether social networks are a good marketing tool for the property industry. It's an industry that can be quite cagey, and I think there's a lot of worry that by being social, they sort of open themselves up to more complaints or that sort of bad communication, if you like. So what are your thoughts about the property industry being more present on social networks, especially if they're going in this immersive way?
I think it's of paramount importance, personally. I started back in the Twitterverse back sort of 2005, 2006, I think it was. And partly because I believed that estate agents and developers, for that matter, needed a voice, and we need to not be afraid to hide behind these logos that we have and the corporate sort of image that we're trying to portray. At the end of the day, especially in the property industry, probably more so than most, I would say, it's all about people buying from people. It's a classic saying. But my biggest belief was that all of my salespeople that were around selling properties to people, if they understood who these people were, and if the clients got to know these people more, that there was more chance that they would be buying from them because there was a more chance of an affinity with them. And back in those days, it was a real difficult thing to justify. It was all very qualitative. It was all what I call fluffy. And even though I knew it was the right thing to do, there was no real quantitative data to back that all up. So let's look at the fluffy side of this, which is fundamentally, as an agency, you have to personalize your brand. It is becoming more and more and more important in everything that we do, that people want to see the people behind that company logo. So that is still paramount to me. But then let's look at the quantitative side of this, which is, you mentioned about the slight negativity in there, Sophie. The point is you can pick that negativity up within 2 seconds if you want to, anywhere, through any platform, blogs, forums, tweets, Facebook updates, Google Plus updates. Every single thing is measurable, quantifiable, and ultimately alertable, if that's even a word. So I think, there's a lot of this concern about this negativity, and I know that even some of the most contentious property brands are not being sort of shown as negative as much as people think they would be. And I think this is a real problem. It's a stigma which people think there's an issue here. There really isn't. Even if you are being mentioned negatively, you've got to put it all into context, because if that person who's mentioning that brand or whomever it is negatively, have they got an audience? Have they got influence? Have they got authority? Most likely they haven't. So that's akin to somebody being disappointed with somebody's service and walking into an open room and shouting, "Oh my God, this company's a load of rubbish," but there's nobody in that room. Would you be worried about that in the physical sense? Probably not, because there's one, maybe two people in that room. So therefore, why be necessarily worried about it in the social world when actually ultimately you're knowing it's happening? In the physical world, you're probably not going to know that this person's walked into a room, talked to 5 of their mates saying, "Oh my God, X and Y estate agents is a load of rubbish." You are never going to know that's happening. If you've got the right things in place in the in the social world, digital marketing world, you will know within 2 minutes that somebody said something bad about you. So my argument is, why ever be afraid of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think there is a stigma around it that doesn't need to be there. It's certainly something that could probably help a lot of estate agents and developers a huge amount, as opposed to damage any sort of branding there. So while we're on social, are there any sort of property-specific apps or social networks that are property-specific that you think could particularly aid agents and developers in marketing their brand or making sales? Because there's quite a few sort of apps, and I think there's a couple of social networks that are supposed to be property-specific that have come out recently. But then there are a few apps like hyperlapse that could perhaps aid the way that agents or developers market their products. What are your thoughts?
Crikey. Okay, first thought on the property-related social networks. Personally, it's in my experience, and I could be wrong, it's mainly been agent-to-agent networks. So if you want it from an educational perspective, absolutely. I mean, back in the days when there was an awful lot of forums being built for agents to learn from others, yeah, why not? It's a great tool to have. But ultimately, you've got to look at where your clients are. So if there is a particular property social network where none of your clients are, is there any point in being there unless your objective is to learn more about your craft? Personally, I don't think so. One of the things that I get an awful lot when I'm consulting with companies in and out of the property industry is helping them understand A, who their client is, and B, where that social network is which will relate to it. Ultimately, we look and say, well, okay, let's look at the main three. So you've got your Twitters, you've got your Facebooks, and you've got your Google+. Really, they are the three main social media platforms that you're using. Why? Twitter is almost a broadcast mechanism, which is fantastic for educating and also communicating with people of a like mind, and you can search accordingly. Facebook, it's got the biggest audience. Biggest negative of that is you've got to pay for that audience, and you've then got to pay to boost that audience. A lot of businesses are not liking that. Google+, you can't arguing it simply from a Google+ local perspective, where you need Google to understand who your business is and getting it out there. And also, take the power of what we've got here, which is a Google+ Hangout. The ability to live stream and get engagement in and out is a very important factor. So we often work with a lot of agencies and just say, not a lot of people are on Google+, but the power of Google+, to take it out of it and put it into your own websites and wherever else you may be, that is a reason to use it. Look at Pinterest. If you've got a very female-orientated demographic or an industry, start looking at Pinterest. It's a great area for property porn. If you've got the greatest of properties out there, start engaging with that, because you can suddenly start to broadcast out these great properties you've got on the books. So personally, property-specific networks, not convinced to me, because I think if your objective is clients, I don't know if they're necessarily going to be there. But you mentioned apps in particular. There's a few apps out there which you can look at, certainly from the augmented space. One of the biggest winners in my mind for specific apps is one called Virtual View, which is a UK-based company. It's very cost-effective, and it means that pretty much every single agent in the world can be starting to embed videos into their brochure material. I think it's the equivalent of about £20, I think, to embed videos into pages. What's that, 25-ish euros? All the way through to having 3D images of their properties appearing. It's a couple of hundred. So that's one of the apps I would most definitely say is a worthy tool to have a look at.
Yeah, I think I used it the other day for the first time. It's really quite cool to just have your phone there or your iPad and just sort of scan over the brochure and see everything pop out and come to life. And they sort of filter out, don't they, in layers, so you can see the building plans for the house or property you're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. So my understanding is that what you do is you providing Virtual View with the photo of the front and the back of the property, and then you're giving them the 2D floor plans. And what it's doing is that when you have your iPhone or your tablet device over the picture that is to be augmented, the image will appear from the floor, and you'll see the 3D image of that property. And then individually, the layers will peel back so that you're able to see the floor plan around that property as well. It's just a very clever way for you to see things differently and set yourself up to be different from the competition. So yeah, I mean, it's for me, that's a no-brainer, the Virtual View.
And Trulia and Thunder do some cool stuff with augmented reality, don't they? I think Trulia have got Trulia Glass, and then Thunder use Layer.
They do, yes they do. So to put it into perspective, this is Google Glass, just for people who may not know what Glass is all about. So Glass is ironically some glasses without any glass on, as you can see there. But you've got in here basically a computer, and you've got a camera in the front, and you've got the screen here. So to put it into the property perspective, what Trulia and Thunder have done is they have built an engine that if you're standing on the street and you've got a pair of these on, so I'll just put these on like this, for example. So you'll be walking around, and you can just see this little screens just lit up just there. As you're walking down that street, and you've saved criteria. So Trulia and Thunder, incidentally, are portals like property showrooms. You'll be walking along, and you will be able to then click on it, go through the app, and it'll know your search criteria already from predetermined results. And as you're moving around, in this little screen would appear all the properties that are in your search criteria. and you can then click on them to see more information. You can get direction to go and see them. So look, Sophie, yeah, it's cool, but my argument, and it always has been with Google Glass, is how many of your prospective clients are going to be using Glass? You know, these are £1,000 in the UK, $1,500 over in America. It's a lot of money for a tool which, personally, as much as I like it as a tool, I think there are better uses of this in a real estate example than having another example, because that is relying on the end consumer having a pair of glass. One is that there's a couple of companies which have used, up until about 3 months ago, Google Glass could live stream from this camera. And there are a couple of companies in the US who are starting to exploit that to do virtual viewings of properties. So an agent would go along at an agreed time and would stream a live first-person perspective of that property from Glass. That, for me, is great because the end user would be using their computer, which everybody has, or their tablet device, which everybody has. They wouldn't need Glass. It's using, like I mentioned earlier on about Google+, it's using the power of the device to offer something which everybody, or it's offering the facility into something which everybody has. So you're not relying on the tech, you're using the power of the tech to fuel what everyone else has.
Do you think Leia, for example, they use an app, don't they? They don't use, I'm not sure, or do they use Glass for Leia?
Yeah, they've got both, actually. They have got both. Yeah, that's a good point, Sophie. So I should have explained that. So augmented reality, although it's about seeing things appear from the floor, it can also be about seeing things appear in your viewfinder of your phone. So what Leia have done is using the portal of Funda, like property showrooms. There's a massive amount of data there on properties, and as you're moving around with your phone, you can see the properties in that area popping up, and then you can click on the details to see where they are. So it's called geographical-based AR. It knows your location because of your smartphone, and it will show properties of interest in that local area to you. And what Funda have done is they've just put that into Glass as well, Sophie. So it's the same as that Trulia example you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a chap at MIPIM a couple of weeks back, and he's from Grosvenor, and they're sort of talking about bringing augmented reality to the high street and that sort of thing. So you could be walking down the high street with your mobile phone, and sort of certain offers that are related to you could pop out, whether it be an estate agency window or whether it just be, like Thornton's with chocolate offers or something like that. And I think that's really exciting. Do you think it will be, it won't be too long until augmented reality is sort of something that everybody is using on their mobile phones on a daily basis?
I think absolutely. I mean, it's augmented reality at the moment. It's there. It's available. It's being used. This point of geographical-based AR, like what you've just mentioned about the high street, it is already being used at the moment in, say, central London, where you could be walking down and you can see restaurant reviews in your viewfinder. I'm a little bit less understanding of that, to be perfectly frank, because I think it takes understanding for the client to use that sort of technology. And actually, I think there are better technologies that we could use in the property industry to help them with that. And actually, the retail industry as well. I mean, you've got got iBeacons, which are again, they know where you are geographically. So you've got iBeacons and what's called NFC, which is the ability for, let's say you're walking down Oxford Street in London. And what iBeacons will do, if you've downloaded an Oxford Street app, or if you've walked into, I don't know, Lakeside Shopping Centre and you have the Lakeside app, or you have a, I don't know, Next app, something like that, is it will know exactly where you are. And so it can send you contextual offers to your phone directly without the app even being on. To me, augmented reality requires you to understand the power of augmented reality as you're going down the high street and what it will give you. It will require you to open up an app as you're walking down and hold it in front of you as you're walking down to view something in the viewfinder. To me, that's a lot of friction between that intention and the action in order for you to do something. I think most people, maybe not me, because I'm patient with this sort of stuff and I want to understand how it's all working, most people just want to walk down the bloody high street and get to the restaurant. They won't, you know, oh, hang on a minute. Let me get my phone out. Let me open up. Oh, hang on now. What was that augmented reality app I downloaded? There's different ones. So which one can I do and hold up and open? I think there's a big barrier there between that intention and action. Whereas with iBeacon technology, it doesn't require you to do anything. You just walking down the high street, you'll get a vibration on your phone, you'll open it up and it will say, Next has just offered you 20% off of your purchase. I see you're nearby. You don't have to do anything with that. And as long as retailers, property companies, anybody for that matter, uses it in the correct way and it's contextual to the person that is walking down, so it's all relevant to them, I think iBeacons in that respect will be more powerful than augmented reality in that thing. So it's all using tech in the right way, not the wrong way.
And so if we sort of pull it back, sort of what are the areas of tech then? Are there any other areas of tech that we've not mentioned that you think are paramount to the property industry going forward?
Oh God, I mean it's massive. I mean the entire world that I surround myself is looking for the next tech thing which we can relate to the property industry, and it's right for it. So we've already mentioned augmented reality. For me, the buildings popping up and using property literature in the right way is important. Virtual reality is there is no doubt from the new build perspective, it is the future of where property viewings will take place. We've mentioned iBeacons and NFC. I think if we use them in the correct way, open house viewings will never be the same again. People walking down the street, you'll be able to notify them of open houses happening at any point over the next couple of weeks. I think that's very, very important. You've got the likes of helicopter drone flying, which a lot of agencies is now starting to use. There's a lot of legislative things to keep an eye on, but there's a lot of agents, both overseas and domestically, who are starting to use them to basically do videos in different ways. What else have we got? We've got 3D printing. We've got a lot of agents now investigating 3D printing as ways of building 3D printed models rather than building balsa wood mums. So they're more cost effective. You can print them out wherever you want to be. We've got 360-degree video filming, which is coming out pretty quickly at the moment, which again is linking itself back into virtual reality, because if you've got the ability to hold up a stick and take a video film of the entire area and allow people to move around the video where they want to go and how they want to go, that's very important. You've got tools and apps like, there's an app out there at the moment called View Eat, which allows a lot of agents to take virtual tours of property using their smartphones, which can be linked in with everything else. I mean, Sophie, it goes on and on and on, but there's a lot of tech out there at the moment which is fundamentally wrong, and there's good tech out there, which is really what I try and digest down in some of the stuff that I build. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest problem a lot of people have, is just going, there's so much. What do I choose? Where do I go? Which route is going to be best for my company? And I think there's a lot out there, and there's very little information on sort of what the best route might be for the property industry. I mean, there's lots on your blog and like how it can apply and that sort of thing, which I found really interesting. But I found very, very few people talking about it in relation to the property industry. Very much out there.
There is a massive disconnect between the property industry, which, let's be brutally honest, and I mean this in the nicest way, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type model, and it's a people business and people understand it. And then there's a technology world, and ultimately, if we can use technology to help us sell more properties, that is fundamentally what it's all about. But there is a big fear that we're just using technology for technology's sake. And this is my little plug, if people are going on to the blog, which is www.jamesdearsley.co.uk, I am basically dissecting all bits of technology down so that property agents and property developers can understand which bits are good and which bits are bad, specifically for property. Because it's blooming hard to work out what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. So, bringing it back a little bit, I think another one of the fears that I've certainly heard from some of the agents and developers I've spoken to is that this sort of tech is going to make them redundant. Like similarly to the travel industry, for example, you used to have travel agents everywhere. There are still some that do well, Thomas Cook, those sorts of guys. But but there are lots that don't exist anymore, and that was because of everything moving to online. And with it being such a relationships people business, do you think that's going to be? Do you think it will be the case for property as well, or do you think agents will always have a place?
I think agents will always have a place. It's just it's using technology in the right way. I mean, one of the things I often say is that sales and revenue generation, specifically in the property industry, are as a result of human interaction. So no matter how much tech we're using, the sale and the revenue is always coming from that person-to-person interaction there. It's very, very rare that it's becoming solely online, a humanless transaction. So sales and revenue generation are as a result of human interaction. It's the mechanism by which we are getting that interaction which is changing. So yes, do you know what? Every single agent, every single developer out there needs to understand that technology is changing things. Online has changed things. But unlike perhaps the travel industry, where, let's be brutally honest, the average holiday for a family is going to be anywhere, sort of several £1,000s. The house is the single most expensive thing people will ever buy. They still want that reassurance of looking at somebody in the eyes, understanding, trusting, and liking them. It's just, as agents and developers, we have to reach those people in the right way. Now, you mentioned Thomas Cook there, for example. Funnily enough, Thomas Cook have had an appalling few years.
Oh, really?
Really, really bad. But they're now changing. They've now, the latest CEO to come in, I can't remember the lady's name. She's revolutionised the entire brand. They've now started in Bluewater. They've just got their first, what they call their concept store. They've installed virtual reality head devices in there so that people can visit the store. It's about bringing people into that store and saying, this is what a Thomas Cook holiday is all about. And they've built a virtual holiday destination. So no longer do you have to walk away with a brochure to flick through and go, okay, I quite like the look of those pictures. They're saying, no, we believe so much in our holidays, go and sit in one of our resorts so you understand what it feels like to be there. So yeah. even the travel industry is basically understanding now that their entire model has shifted. Their business model has changed so fundamentally that they can't just be agents sitting behind a desk anymore advising people. The entire mechanism by which we book holidays has changed. So they're saying, well, how do we change with that and make travel agents still relevant today? And you know what? That's all we've got to do in the property industry is stay relevant.
So what's your advice to staying relevant? Just sort of take a open arm approach to new tech, but be careful in what it is that you use and that it's actually relevant to your business.
Absolutely. I think there needs to be an understanding, there needs to be a following of how to use tech properly. But fundamentally, agents need to realise, and developers, that the business model of selling houses has changed, and it will continue to change. And just by understanding how the digital marketing world is working and the technology world is working, they will, even just by understanding, will greatly influence the way that their business is going to change over the next 5 to 10 years. But that's ultimately what they need to do. They need to look and say, well, where am I going to be in 5 years' time? Where am I going to be in 10 years' time? Is my business going to be about hitting the phones and booking as many appointments as I possibly can and hoping that when I go out on viewings, I'll convert them to sales? It's not going to be like that in 5 to 10 years. So by taking an early start of understanding how technology and marketing will help them, is going to help them grow their business. And it's one of these classic ones for me, which is if you stay and you stagnate, you're not going to progress as a business. And fundamentally, the biggest thing is if you go down a solely technology and online route, I think you're going to fail. If you stick in a wholly traditional route, you're going to fail. If you merge the two together and you take what's good about both parts together, you will succeed very, very well, as long as you're looking at a long-term perspective.
Fantastic. That's it's really interesting approach. So one of the other things that sort of marketing and certainly targeting clients is becoming quite different, because it's becoming very data heavy, very targeted, very segmented. I think at the moment that's sort of an area that was discussed with a couple of other people I've spoken to as well, as being something that could seriously impact the way the property industry works going forward from now. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little about was do you think predictive analytics, and when I say predictive analytics, I mean sort of gathering data from various different sources and using that, finding the I guess the patterns in that, consumer patterns in that data, and then creating actionable insights from those in order to create segmented, specific promotions for clients, and whether that's geolocation specific to where they are, or specific to what they're looking for, or and do you think that predictive analytics is something agents and developers are going to buy into, or do you think it's something they'll stay away from, again, for fear of being made redundant, or perhaps it's even beyond their abilities, because it's quite again, you need sort of big teams of analysts and that sort of thing to get hold of that data. So, sorry, quite a long-winded question. What are your thoughts?
Oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. Okay, let me start by saying this, which is, there's a famous quote by a management consultant, an Austrian-American, I think it was, called Peter Drucker. And I often use this, which is saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that sums up my entire motivation, methodology, and inspiration behind this point of data analytics. If we are not measuring that, we can't help our business move forward. The world of predictive analytics, as much as the world of social analytics. Sorry, my phone's going off. Good, they haven't left a message. There we go. That whole world, it's so fundamentally important, but taken into context. Basically, the measuring of trends will tell you various things about the behaviour of what your clients are doing. Will tell you about what your website is doing. But let's talk about predictive for here. By understanding how people are buying houses, by understanding, and it's often said that there are 5 times that you move house in your life. Mm-hmm. By being able to predict at what point the clients that you sold to previously, or the applicants that are coming in, when they will be moving next, all of that, if you're lumping that in to an entire data process, it's fundamentally important if you have everything else in place. It becomes the passive CRM system. Let's put it into absolute specifics. So, you're never going to sell to every single client that walks into your door as an estate agent. But if you can say, okay, I know that this couple in my qualification have just come in and they're getting married, which means that is the first stage. That's the first purchase, or actually the second. The first one's normally renting a property. Second is buying as a couple. Third, actually, interestingly, one of the big moves is children. So if I know, on average, by using predictive analysis, that it normally takes between 3 and 5 years for somebody to then move again because of, an upsize, you can use a predictive analysis to basically put that into an email nurturing campaign that you're building over a 5 or 10 year period that can then send out those email reminders, after 2 years. Oh, hi, Mrs. Smith. How's that search going? Are you really enjoying living in wherever it was that they moved to, even if you weren't the person who sold the house to them? All of that is a passive way of gaining leads back again. You know that after 10 years, they might have then had 2 or 3 kids. Put something out again. It's all predictive analysis. So, yeah, if done in the right way, you absolutely should have that. Yeah.
I think it's one of the things that is going to become fundamental within the next few years. Sort of information and transparency seems to be really pushing things at the moment, and that's not just sort of transparency on social, like we said, but transparency on transactions and all that sort of thing is something that's going to, I think it's going to be huge in the next couple of years. So, do you think then perhaps that those sort of predictive analytics is in the place of the agent's sort of a smaller environment, or do you think perhaps it sits more comfortably with property portals?
Oh, that's a good question. With the very nature of property portals, obviously they have the data. They have so many properties on there, but really and truly for me, that is all about geolocation data. It's not necessarily about client data per se.
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So I think everybody has a place in the whole data, this whole big data spectrum. Every single person, every single company, every single portal has got a reason to do data analytics, predictive or otherwise. Portals are going to be fantastic at some areas of predictive analytics, but awful at others. They're not going to be able to, you will not know necessarily that Mrs. Smith brought on Borough Road, whereas an agent will. So they should be able to use that into their predictive analytics to say, well, when's Mrs. Smith going to buy again? But you, over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period, will know fundamentally asking prices, sold prices, guide prices, you name it, about trends on a geographical data spread. So each to their own. Every single person, it's one of these ones where they need to look at their business model in 5 or 10 years and say, well, how am I going to utilize all of this tech? Same with the data. Can I use the data that I have in my database to my advantage over the future?
Yeah, fantastic. So I think we've more or less covered everything. I've just got a couple of questions. Actually, I think we've covered most of this, actually. Oh, here we go. Here's one question I forgot to ask. How do you think agents and developers and property portals, actually, so all three, can make real estate interesting on social media? Because it's a bit of a tricky area sometimes to make real interesting unless you're directly involved in it.
Well, I think it depends fundamentally on who you are as a business. If you are an estate agent, then it's all about local. It's all about you being the local spokesperson of your area. One of my biggest beliefs is that the pubs have now gone down the chute. You've got not a lot of people are doing a lot of stuff with the churches anymore. So there's actually no hub of a village. There's no hub of a town. Arguably, and some people may hate this, your estate agent is probably one of the most local businesses and people who know everything that's going on in that town. So for me, I've always encouraged very much the local estate agent to become the spokesperson for the area. Talking about the schools, talking about the pubs, talking about the clubs, talking about the sports, talking about everything, and be the hub of that information. Because if you are then respected for being so passionate about that town, people are more likely going to, anywhere they search for information about the town, they're going to come across your website, they're going to come across your social updates, they're going to come across your digital marketing, because you are passionate about what you believe in. So far from just broadcast tweeting, which we saw 6, 7, 8 years ago, and sadly I still see it a bit today. You can vary everything that you're doing. Let's take property developers. Property developers, it doesn't necessarily just have to be selling out your developments. Personalize everybody. Let's take a Spanish developer. Let's look at Pedro, who's putting the bricks together to build that property. Do a profile on Pedro. They will want to know that this guy is building that house. Look at the techniques that you're using to build those properties. People will find it rather bizarrely interesting. Create case studies on how you put those buildings together, who your furniture designers are, personalize those guys, who your kitchen fitters are. Build a story around that development, because then do you know what? People feel ownership. They feel belief about what you're doing. It's not just another development built 30 miles from the coast. It's not. There's an entire story. That used to be a pig farm that was owned by, the builder's friend's son that he couldn't afford anymore. So they very kindly built it to keep the community going around that. Everything has a story. People love stories. Social marketing, digital marketing is about building stories.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really coming into play at the moment, isn't it? The sort of storytelling of marketing element. So yeah, I think it was something that was lost somewhere along the way when the internet first came into play, and everybody just wanted to just get their stuff out there and not necessarily thinking about the quality of doing so. I think storytelling is something that's really coming into it again now.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, well, I think that's everything I wanted to ask. Do you have anything you wanted to add, James?
No, don't be afraid to fail, I think is the only thing I will say.
Yeah.
And that is on everything, from tech to social, because unless you're trying things, you'll never know either how good they are or how to do them. And I've spent my entire personal and professional life failing and only by failing am I then learning how to do the right things. And as long as you're open and transparent about that, you can't fail.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for speaking to me. I will ask you one thing. We launched our new responsive website yesterday. So I will ask if you just go and have a look and let us know what you think at some stage. But otherwise, thank you so much for chatting to me. Found it hugely interesting. And like I mentioned before, this will go in a big written piece that will go out in OPP. So you'll be able to read that there, see it there.
Fantastic. Well, look, what I'll do is, for everybody who will watch this, I'm just going to stop this broadcast, but if you are interested in stuff that I do, there's a digital marketing bureau down here, which is all about our marketing stuff, and there's the jamesdearsley.co.uk site, which you can subscribe to monthly overviews of information, so I hope you find that interesting. So, Sophie, I'm going to end this broadcast now, and stay on, because it will be, we can have a chat afterwards.
Okay.